Be'ezus Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Bava Metzia, daf Lamed Vav, 36. We're going to start from the Mishnah on daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis. I'm going to make it very big here. The Mishnah on daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis, Hasoiches Apara. Okay, let us begin. The Mishnah begins, Hasoiche Para Mechaveres, someone who rents a cow from his friend. So when you rent a cow, you obviously you obviously have some obligations of shmira, and therefore, if it got stolen or you lost it, you have to pay for it. However, let's say the cow just died, you don't have to pay for it. So he rented a cow from his friend. He paid money to rent the cow, like you rent a car. The Mishnah says v'hishila la'acher u'meisa kedarke. Then during his term, he loaned it to somebody else, and it died by itself. Now, by loaning it to somebody else, listen, the guy who borrowed it, he is obligated to pay even if the animal dies by itself. That's the unfortunate thing. If you borrow something, you take on all obligations, almost of 99% of all obligations, if anything happens to that animal. So what's going to happen over here is, that the renter is going to make the money, because the borrower is going to have to pay the renter, and the renter is not going to have to pay the one he rented from. So that's the interesting thing. So Mishnah says, Yishava hasoicha shemesa kedarka. The renter swears that it died by itself, so he's not obligated to pay to the renter, the renting company or whoever he rented it from. Bahashoyel, and the borrower, basically, Yishalem the Soicha will have to pay to the renter, because the borrower took on the obligations of anything happening to this animal. So therefore, the guy who rented a cow is making money on the whole situation. Now he's going to get a full cow. Rabbi Yossi, in theory, this makes a lot of sense. But Rabbi Yossi said, how is it possible somebody does business with a cow belonging to his friend? Ella, it's not your cow. How could you make a profit on it? You just rented the cow. Basically, what Rabbi Yossi says, no, I think the borrower would just have to pay directly to the original owner of the animal. So the Gemara wants to understand. Amalei Rav Idi bar Oven la'Abaya. Rav Idi bar Oven said to Abaya, Michti, let us examine the situation. The guy that rented the cow, it's not his cow. So how is he going to get the money? How is he supposed to collect money from the person that borrowed the cow from him? It's not his cow. In what way did he acquire this cow that the borrower is now going to have to pay him? It's not his cow. Bishvua, when the borrower swears that it died by itself, so or when he swears to the renter, when the renter swears to the one he rented from, that it died by itself, that makes automatically the cow his. Let the renter tell the guy that rented it, dal an dal shvua, so step out of the way. I don't want to hear your shvua. It's my cow. Let the shoyel, the borrower, pay me. And you step out of the way. This is not your cow. Amalei. So this was the question Rabbi Idi bar Oven asked Abaya. Amalei. So Abaya answered, do you think the renter owns this cow because he swore to the person he rented from that the cow died by itself? I lent it to somebody and it died by itself. That's what makes it the renter's cow? No. As soon as the cow died, automatically this cow now belonged to the renter, because he's not obligated to pay to who he rented from, because he's not obligated when the animal dies by itself. So therefore, he owns that animal. So therefore, the borrower pays the renter. Ushvua, the fact that he swears to the maskir, we'll call him the maskir, is the person that he rented from, is to calm him down, to make him, to let him know the truth. The truth was that the animal did die by itself. So the renter is not at fault over here, except that the renter is going to make a profit, because when it died by itself, he lent it to somebody. And therefore, it's his luck that now the animal belongs to him, and the borrower is going to have to pay him a full animal. We're going to go through the following Gemara. I'm just going to visualize it, and then I'm just going to say it outside very quickly, because it's a little cheshbon over here. But anyway, we're going to see here that the Reb Zera is going to tell us a novelty a quick novelty, that if a guy rented an animal, right? If he rented an animal and then lends it back to the renter, you see, till now he lent it to somebody else, but now he rented it back to the renter, and then the renter who now borrowed the animal re-rents it back to him, and then he lends it back to the renter. Okay, so now you get it. So in all these cases, it's going to come out that the borrower, which is the renter, which is really the owner of the animal, who's now borrowing back his own animal, is going to have to pay the guy that he rented from 4 animals. One because he of what he owes him, still remaining money of his rental agreement, and plus he owes him a brand new animal because because he borrowed the animal from him. So basically, that's what Rab Zera says. That's what Rab Zera says, and Mar Bar Rav Ashi is going to disagree with that. So basically, Rab Zera is going to say he owes him 4 cows, and then Mar Bar Rav Ashi is going to say something else, that he owes him only 1 cow. Anyway, we're going to go through it very quickly and then get to the next topic. We're on Lamed Hey Amud Beis. Okay, Amar Rab Zera said, sometimes the owner of the animal, and he rented it to somebody else, and now, based on the logic of our Mishnais, he's going to have to pay 4 cows to the guy he rented it to. Hey, Chidami, how could you come out with such a scenario? A guy rented from an owner the cow for 100 days. And then the owner of the animal, borrowed the same animal that he rented him for 90 days. So the guy re-rented that animal from the guy that he lent it to, which is the owner of the animal. And then the owners borrowed the animal for 70 days. Basically, it died during the borrowing term. Now, since he borrowed it twice, is obligated to one cow. Plus, he has to give him another cow to finish out the 2 rental terms that he has. So, the way the Cheshbon the Rashi makes, that he's going to have to pay 4 cows to the guy that he rented to. So you could own an animal. Basically, Rab Zera, with a Jewish head, says you can own an animal, and I can figure out a situation that you rent that animal to somebody else. If you borrow back that animal twice, and you re-rented it twice, you're going to have to, and something happens to the animal, you're going to be obligated, even though it's your animal, you're going to be obligated to pay to the person you rented it to, 4 animals. So that's what Rab Zera said. But it's still 1 cow. It went from a rental agreement to a borrowing agreement, then to rental, but it's still 1 cow you're dealing with. So Rab Zera said, but the cow is not here, so it's just a financial obligation. But Mar Bar Rav Ashi says, you only have 2 cows. One because you borrowed a cow, one because you rented it. Basically, you pay him 1 cow to the person you rented it to. Plus, you give him access to another cow to use to finish out the 2 rental terms, and then he returns it back to you. But it's still, again, the same idea, though, that you could rent something to somebody, you own the cow, and you can figure out a scenario that guy is going to make money off your cow. Anyway, new Gemara. Rabbi Yirmiyah said, both, again, let's go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, if you rent a cow to somebody, this guy rented a cow, and then he lent it to somebody else, right? So, and then a cow died by itself. So both of them, basically the renter and the borrower, are going to swear to the owner of the animal. And therefore, and if everything is true, then what's going to happen is that the owner of the animal gets nothing, and the renter of the animal, he'll get from the borrower of the animal the full value of an animal. That's if everything is true. But sometimes if they're lying, so it depends. If you lie and you're not trying to save yourself money, then you chayav a korban chatas. Like a regular lie, if you lie and you swear that you lie and you make a lie, you chayav a korban oil of yard. So if you're poor, you don't have to bring an animal, you can bring a bird. But if you try to save yourself money, then you have to bring a korban asham, a fat animal, a real animal. You can't get out of that. So what the Gemara is going to say over here is, Omer Rabbi Yirmi said that bottom of Lamed Heyam Beis, Pa'amim, sometimes, Shishneim Chatas, the soicher and the borrower are going to chayev a carbon chatas if they said a bad oath. Pa'amim shishneim ba'asham. Sometimes they both have to bring a carbon asham. Pa'amim sha'soicher b'chatas v'shoyel ba'asham. Sometimes the renter pays a chatas and the borrower pays an asham. Pa'amim sha'soicher ba'asham v'shoyel b'chatas. And sometimes the reverse. The soicher pays an asham v'shoyel b'chatas. Hoketzin. So this is the general rule. If you make a oath, kafiras manim, that you're denying you owe any money, and it turns out you were lying, asham, you have to bring a big carbon asham, and it costs you quite a bit of money. It's a ram, so that has to be paid for. Bitu svasayim, but if it's just a lie, but you weren't trying to save yourself money, but you just swore, and the circumstances were wrong, but you by the lie didn't protect you from a money obligation. So then chatas, you carve a carbon chatas, which is cheaper than an asham. So the Gemara explains, pa'amim sheshteim b'chatas. Both the renter and the borrower are going to bring a carbon chatas. Now, who are they swearing to? They're swearing to the owner of the animal. Let's say kagoin shemesa kedarka. The animal died by itself. V'amru, but they didn't say. They swore nensa. It got. Let's say bandits came and, or let's say a tree fell on it. It didn't die by itself. A tree fell on it. So by swearing the wrong thing, soicher the ben kach mifta potter. Soicher, even if he gets it wrong on the shvua, if he said I swear it shmeiksa kadarka, died by itself, and really a tree fell on it, he's always potter. So then he brings an obligation of a carbon chatas. That's what you have to do. Shoyel, but the borrower. The benkach chiyuv b'chayev. A borrower, doesn't matter how the animal died, he's always obligated to pay. So even if he swore and got the story wrong in a shvua, he also has to bring a carbon chatas. Fine. Pa'amim sheshneim b'asham. Sometimes they both have to bring a carbon asham. Kegoin chenignava. It got stolen. So really, the renter has to pay if it got stolen. V'amru, both the borrower and the soicher said mesa machmas balacha. It died while it was doing work. The tavayu kakafru mamayna. They're trying to by saying that it died during its work. Even a borrower doesn't have to pay. That's a very important point. A borrower doesn't have to pay if it dies during its work. So they both trying to say that we don't have to pay money. They're really both obligated. They're trying to nafshenu. They're trying to disassociate themselves from paying any money. Therefore, they both have to bring a carbon asham. How do you have it the reverse? The rental pays a chatas and the shoyel pays an asham. It died by itself. Okay, so if it died by itself, the soicher is not obligated to pay, but they say Mesa Machmas Blocha died by during work. Well, if the shoyel says that, if they said the shoyel says that, and really it was Mesa Kedarka, the shoyel is trying to protect himself from paying. Soicher the ben kach ben pach bifta potter, doesn't matter what happened. He always has to. He's not obligated to pay. So chayiv chatas, he has to bring a carbon chatas because he wasn't trying to save himself any money. Just he got the story wrong when he swore. Shoyel the mechayev b'meisa b'gedarka. The story actually happened. It died by itself. So the shoyel would have been obligated to pay. The kopot the nafshay b'meisa machmas b'loch, but he lied and said, "Oh, it died while I was working with it." So and the borrower doesn't have to pay. So he lied in a shvua that would exempted him from paying. Therefore, if he's found liable, then he has to bring a carbon asham. The opposite is true. It was stolen, and they said it died by itself. It's chayev when it's geneva veda. And he's saying, the Soicher says it died by itself. He's trying to get out of paying the renter by saying it died by natural causes. So therefore, ba'asham. If it's incorrect, he has to bring a carbon asham. Shoyel, the borrower, the benkach, the borrower, no matter what he says, he's always, no matter what he says, with the actual story and what he swore happened, he's still obligated to pay. So bechatas, since he swore falsely, although it didn't gain him anything, he's chayav to pay a korban chatas. So all these things are obvious things. So the Gemara says, Mike Kamashmalan. What is the novelty of what what Rabbi Yirmiyah said? What is he teaching us? I mean, I could figure this all out, and it's Mishnayos that teach you these things. And says the Gemara, a very important point. La puki mit Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah wanted to say that he does not hold of Rabbi Ami. There's no korban chatas if you swear falsely, if Bezdin made you swear falsely. That's a interesting shita, because the Chumash says that what's an example that you swear falsely? You swear that you ate and it turns out you didn't eat. Or you swear that you drank and it turns out you didn't drink. So that's a shvuos bitoy. But if Bezdin made you swear, so and you swore that it happened, that the animal died this way and it really died another way, even if you lied, still you wouldn't be chayav a korban shvuos bite. This is the shita of Rabbi Ami, because the pasuk says oy nefesh ki shishava lebat Yisrael. The only time you're obligated is ki shishava ma'atzma. If you on your own volition come up and make the shvua, not that Bezdin forced you to make that oath. So that's what you're not chayav a korban chatas. Kamash malon like Rabbi Ami. That's why Rabbi Yirmiyah will have to say over and over, I don't hold of Rabbi Ami. In this case, with the shomer, it's Bezdin forcing the shomers or the shoyel to make these shvuas. And even if they're not going to save themselves by swearing falsely, they're not saving themselves any money. But if they make a false oath, they'll still be chayav a korban chatas. Nu Gemara. Itmar, we learned a teaching, and this is a very important subject. Shomer. A guy was given something to watch. So instead of watching it, he transferred, your mortgage is sold. So shomer shemasa l'shomer. He gave over the obligations to watch the item to another shomer. Now, Rav Amapata, Rav says the first shomer is not obligated. Rabbi Yochanan Ramachayev. Rabbi Yochanan says that no matter what happens to this item, the first shomer, who without permission of the owner gave it to another shomer, he's going to be obligated to pay no matter what happens to the item. Baya explained. The time of the Rav, according to Rav, it doesn't matter. Let's say you're the first one was a unpaid watchman, and he gave it over to a paid watchman. He increased the watching of this item, because by paying the shomer sachar, now the shomer sachar is obligated to pay if the item gets stolen or lost. So he enhanced the shmira, and so therefore, according to Rav, you would certainly be potter. But even if you downgraded the shmira, the first one was a shomer shachar, and he gave it over to a shomer chinam. The geruya gara l'shmira, so he made it the shmira downgraded. Potter, you're still not obligated to pay. My tama, because the simple reason is the hamasla bendas. You gave it to somebody who's a human being. He should have watched it, so you didn't do anything wrong. You did it without permission of the owner, but you didn't give it to a child to watch. You gave it to somebody who's a human being. So therefore, nothing. You're not obligated to pay. Well, time me the Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who says you are obligated to pay, is loy mebayit. You don't have to tell me that even a shemisacha that gave it to a shemachinam that he downgraded the shmira. Certainly yechayev. Even if it was a shemachinam that gave it to a shemisacha, and therefore you increased the level of shmira on this item. So Rabbi Yochanan said, you did a good thing. You were a shemachinam. You hired somebody else to be a shemisacha. So why? And nevertheless, chayev. You chayev, the first shomer did it without permission. And because you do something without permission, the amalei, the owner of the item, could say, "Ein ritzoini shei pigdoini biyad achi." You got to remember that. I don't want my item that I deposited with you, even if you paid somebody else to watch it, to be in his hands. I like you and I trusted you, but not him. Amar Rav Chizda said, Rav said that you're not obligated to pay. Shomer shemosel the shomer is potter. So that Rav never stated that. In fact, it comes from a story, and the way Rav paskin, we assume that that's what Rav holds. Shomer shemosel the shomer is potter. What's the story? The Haniganoi, they were their gardeners. The Chol Yom have a mafkim araya gaba the hisafta. Every day they would deposit their gardening tools by an old lady who watched it there. That's what they had a set person that watched their gardening tools when they would finish work every single day. One day, the lady wasn't home, so they gave it to somebody else to watch. One of their co-workers to watch the tools. So that person who was supposed to watch the gardening tools heard a chasana, heard music. Let's say there was a music concert. Nafak alzal. And he went out and redeposited, took the items that were in his shmira and gave it over back to the original old lady who used to watch the gardening tools. When they came back, the tools were stolen from the old lady that they normally deposit the tools by. Also, the coming to Rav, so they came to the father Rav, upatre, and Rav said that shomer is potter because he gave it to another shomer. So if someone who observed this story, that the reason why Rav said that the guy who did what he did, he gave it back to the old lady, is because he's a shomer shemasel l'shomer, and every shomer that shemasel l'shomer is potter. V'lohi, it's now you can't extend that psak from Rav to other places. Shani Hosim, because over there a difference. The whole Yominama inu gufay gaba the hisafta have a mafkid luhu. Everyone, all those people would have wanted that every day they're depositing their tools by that old lady. So they certainly didn't mind that this guy deposited a tool by the old lady. That's why he's potter. But if he would have deposited the tools by a stranger, could be Rav would hold that shomer shemasel l'shomer would be chayav, because they could say, we don't want our tools to be by the stranger. It's only because he gave it to their original shomer, the old lady, he gave it back to them. That's why Rav said it's potter. Anyway, Yosef, Rab Ami, v'kamal Ashmaitzer. Rab Ami said this teaching of Rab Yochanan. Esvei Rab Abba Bar Mama Rab Ami. So Rab Abba Bar Mama asked Rab Ami, "You telling me that shomer shemasel l'shomer according to Rab Yochanan, and you agree with that, is chayiv?" Let's listen to this story. Someone rents a cow from his friend. Our story in our Mishnah is a shomer that's giving to a shomer. Guy rented a cow from his friend, loaned it to somebody else, and the cow died by itself. So the renter swears to the original owner, the cow died by itself, so I'm not obligated to pay you, and the borrower is going to pay the renter. Now, who gave the renter permission to give it over to lend it to a borrower, to sublet it? You can't, every rental agreement, it says you can't sublet it. In Isa, if it's true what Rabbi Yochanan says, that shomer shemasel l'shomer is chayiv, let the owner say to him, who gave you a right to loan my cow to somebody else? I didn't want my cow or the thing that I rented to you to be in somebody else's hand. So Rab Abba B'Malmal, so Rab Ami answered, Rab Abba B'Malmal, here we're talking about in the document, it gave the renter the rights to lend it out if he wants to. If that's the case, then why doesn't the borrower pay directly to the owner of the item? Why does it go to the renter? Because the document was written that if something would happen, then it's to the discretion of the renter. It's not that the borrower says, it's not that the owner of the item says, you should do this. It's up to the discretion of the renter if he wants to lend it to somebody else. Therefore, any benefit that happens because of that belongs to the renter, not to the borrower. Mosiv Rabbi Bachama asked the question against Abaya, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, is chayiv. Let's see what this story is. Someone gives money to his friend. He put it and he carried it like you carry a sack on your back, and the money started dripping out. That's the negligent way of watching money. Or, but listen to this, he gave the sack of money to his kids who are under bar mitzvah to watch it. And then, let them in the house, and there was no lock on the house, and something happened, you're obligated to pay. You didn't do a good watching. Somebody gave you money to watch. Why are you giving it to your kids in an unlocked house to watch the money? It's only because you gave it to your small kids who are under bar mitzvah. But if you gave it to your kids who are older bar mitzvah, potter, you would not be obligated to pay. But why? You're the shomer, you're the father, you're giving it to your older bar mitzvah kids, and you're telling me you're potter? Why can't you say, I don't want my money to be in somebody else's hands? Amarava, it's very different. Kol hamafkid, we go to Amid Beis, al das ishto b'yonafu mafkid, that it's because he gives the right that when you deposit somebody, you don't expect that person to watch it all the time. It's understood that that person is going to let his kids and watch to his wife and watch it, and therefore not to his young kids to watch it. Only to the older kids to watch it, and that's why it's not. But if it was a shomer giving it to a strange shomer, then it's a problem. Amar Nardoy explained. Takenami, I'll prove it to you. Tiktani oishu motzrei libnoy ubidakatanim chayev. Right? If he gave it to his older children, he would be potter. But if he gave it to somebody else's who's over bar mitzvah, but they're not his kids, doesn't matter if it's a gadol or certainly a cotton. Because the listening let it just talk about he gave it over to small kids, and I know that if you give it to an older bar mitzvah kid, you'll be exempt. No, it's only because you're giving to your own kid who's over bar mitzvah, you're exempt. But if you gave it to somebody else who's over bar mitzvah, you would be liable, because according to the brisa and the way Rabbi Yochanan understands the brisa, shomer shemachzor l'shomer is chayev. So therefore, Amar Rava Hilka said that's the halacha. Shomer shemachzor l'shomer. One watchman gives it over to another watchman without the permission of the owner. Chayev, he's liable to pay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're Shemisacha that downgraded the Shmira. Even if you're a Shemichinam that gave it to a Shemisacha chayev. Why? Even if you upgraded by Tama. Another reason, the Amalei, when it comes down to it and you have to collect, the owner could say, At mehemet li b'shvua, hey chloi mehemet li b'shvua. I trust you if you would have to swear to me. If he swears and it comes down to it, I wouldn't trust him, and therefore, I didn't want you to lend it and give it to somebody else. So that's what we pass in Shemesh Masal Shaima is Chayev. Another 2-3 minutes and then we'll stop. Okay. The Itmar we learned. Pasha ba v'yatz la'agam. You were given a cow to watch, and it somehow went down to a valley that has no air, no fresh air. It went down into a valley, and the animal died by itself. So you were supposed to watch it in your house, and you let the animal out, and it went down to a valley, and it died by itself. Well, it died of natural causes, but you started off by being negligent. Abaya mishmei d'Rabba amachayev, Rava mishmei d'Rabba amar pata. So we don't know what Rabba said. Abaya says chayev, and Rava said in the name of Rabba, you're pata. Abaya mishmei d'Rabba amar chayev. And kol dainu deloidoin kahaydina lav dayanahu. Whoever doesn't paskin like me is not a good dayan. Because and I'd say you're obligated to pay. If you started off being negligent, but at the end, what happened was the thing died and it wasn't your fault, right? You're still chayev. If you're that opinion, certainly you'll be chayev over here. You started off being negligent, but then it died by itself by going down to the meadow, to the valley. So then you certainly will hold like me that you're chayev. Even if you hold, you're not obligated to pay. Here you chayev, because just because it went down and died by itself in the valley, you caused the death. Because once it got into the valley, the valley's air, there's a lot of humidity there, that killed him. So your pshia continued on when it went to the valley and died by itself. Rava mishmei d'Rabba amar pata. Rava says for sure you're potter. It's an einus over here. It died by itself, the potter. Even if you hold, you started off with a pshia and it ended off with an einus. Even if you hold normally, you're chayev. Hacha potter, here you're going to be potter. By tama, it died by itself. The malach hamavis, the malach hamavis that killed this animal, mali hacha mali hasan. Doesn't matter if it would have happened in your house. It would have died by itself in your house. It died in the meadow, in the valley. So that's it. It's not your fault. So therefore, now 2 more lines. If Rabbi would agree that if it went back to the original, Rabbi says Yechayev, if it died in the valley, but if it walked back to the house and there died there, Rabbi would agree, you're potter, because it came back home, so there's no negligence anymore. My tama, the Hodrabe, it came back home. You can't say when it came back to the house that the ear in the valley killed it. It died in the house. So I would say if it walked back to the house and then died, you're potter. And one more point, Rava, who normally says you're Rava says you're always potter, but call Heicha the Ignav. Let's say it got stolen in the valley. Ganav. If the Ganav stole the Ignav Ganav Ba'agam, the Ganav stole the animal in the valley, Umesa Kedak, and then it died by itself. So Beigana de Chayev. So it really doesn't matter. It died in the house of the Ganav, you'll still be Chayev. Why? Because it has nothing to do, my tama, even if you want to say you're a potter, because the Baal Chamavis would have taken the life of this animal wherever it is, and so it died after it was stolen from the valley. But still, it's the fact when it was first stolen. When it was first stolen, that's when you're obligated to pay. Because the Ishafke Malchavavs, if you take the Malchamavas out of the picture, assume that the animal did not die, the base of the Ganav, it's still in the house of a Ganav, and therefore you're still obligated to pay because that's where the chiyuv happened, the obligation happened when it was stolen because of your negligence that it walked down to the valley and it was stolen from there. So this is Machlokes Abaye and Rava, and basis is on Tchilas of Reb Shia v'Seifa ba'Onis, and that's the next couple of sugyas.